I love you. Please subscribe to my mum's channel because, you know, she made me. Yes, she did. Not very well though, you know, dodgy placenta and all, and tiny baby. Guys, welcome back. This is my first video since I had Bodhi. Feels really weird because I haven't done a sit down vlog in ages. I'm going to be sharing my induction story and hopefully giving you some tips to prepare for an induction. I know that it's not what everybody wants from their birth and labour, but if the choice is taken out of your hands or you've decided that you would like to be induced, then hopefully this video will help. I've had so many questions, obviously on my social media, but also, I don't know whether you've seen the Channel Mum support group. You can set up your own thread about any topic, anything that you need advice on or that you're unsure about, kind of topics like getting your newborn into a routine, how to get your newborn to sleep through the night, how to get through miscarriage, baby loss, everything that you could possibly be going through. There's somebody else on there like-minded, or somebody else going through the same thing, or you know, you could be the first person to start a forum chat that could possibly help hordes of other mums. What I'll do is I'll leave the link below so that you guys can go over there and check it out. It's just a really positive, uplifting, helpful place, hopefully, with lots of other parents on there that are kind of going through the same thing. And I know how unbelievably lonely being a mum can be, especially if you don't have people to go to for advice or to ask questions, or say if your friends aren't in the same life stage as you. Channel Mum can be hopefully that support and that help for you. I know it's obviously not the same as meeting up with somebody for a coffee, although there is an area on the Channel Mum support group where you can hopefully go and find other people that live in your area and maybe arrange to meet up. So it's just a really great space, and as I said, if you haven't checked it out already, make sure that you head down to the link below and have a nosy, or pop this link into your web browser, and it's that easy. You just make yourself an account and log in. So just to give you a bit of background about my induction with Bodhi, basically I had quite a, well, an awful pregnancy really, because I suffer with high blood pressure, and basically I am monitored throughout pregnancy for growth. I'd gone in with Bodes and his growth wasn't great. He was on the 10th centile apparently, and that was okay in their minds, so they weren't too concerned about rushing me through induction at this stage early in pregnancy. I was monitored throughout. It started getting closer to the end of pregnancy and his movements were reducing, so he wasn't moving as much, he was a lot quieter, and so obviously that raised a lot of alarm bells for me. My blood pressure was kind of up and down. Some days it was through the roof, other days it was slightly lower, so there was lots going on really. Anyway, I don't want to bore you with too much detail, but I've been going in for daily monitoring because of the reduced movements, and I had a consultant appointment routine consultant appointment with a scan. I went in for the scan and more than half of my amniotic fluid had gone. I don't think my waters had gone. They don't seem to think that my waters had gone because they'd done an amnisure, which is where you put something into the vagina and it gives you a positive negative result of whether there's amniotic fluid there. I had a long chat with the consultant and they made the decision that it would probably be best to induce me the following day. So I literally was in my consultant appointment at like 5 o'clock and they said, can you come in for 9 o'clock tomorrow morning? So I didn't really get much time to think about being induced, which is probably not a bad thing. However, obviously it was quite daunting. I hadn't finished packing my hospital bag. You know, I wasn't ready to give birth, as it were, but that's the spontaneity of having a baby, I guess. So they'd given me a leaflet to go away with to read through the kind of inductions that you can have. I'm obviously a second time mum, so my choices were slightly greater. And also with working in the birth centre, obviously I'm aware of induction of labour, I'm aware of the processes most of the time, so I think I'm very grateful for the fact that I do probably have more knowledge than most in terms of induction. I chose to have the cervical balloon. There are no drugs involved. Obviously I wanted to try and keep it as drug free as possible so that it could be as natural as possible, even though I know I was like forcing an eviction on Bodhi. It's a a balloon that is not inflated, that sits at the end of a rubber tube, well, 2 rubber tubes actually. It's inserted into the cervix, and then they fill it with fluid to the circumference of 4 centimetres to encourage your cervix to dilate, so that you know when the balloon drops out, your cervix has dilated to 4 centimetres. For me, it wasn't painful, but it was uncomfortable. And as I said, it was drug-free, which is what I really wanted. And I know that with things like the pessary, obviously the pessary can often go in and do nothing, and you can end up with like 2 or 3 of them over 24-hour periods and things like that. And I didn't want Bodhi to be distressed. And I know sometimes that obviously pessary can aggravate them. Same as the cervical balloon, obviously your baby's head is likely to be really near the cervix that late on in pregnancy, so I could see why a balloon would irritate them also. But thankfully I had that inserted at about midday and he was absolutely fine. I had multiple monitors throughout the day. So I had the balloon inserted. There were 2 tubes coming out of the vagina that I kind of tucked up into my pants so that I didn't feel like I had something dangling between my legs. It was really bizarre. But as I said, not uncomfortable, just kind of a bit like period sort of pains that I was getting throughout the day. Move around just to encourage gravity to kind of weight down on the balloon and hopefully, you know, get me dilated as quick as I could. So I was walking around the antenatal ward, bouncing on a ball, went for a walk around the unit. So just really tried to, you know, as I said, get my body to go into labour as naturally as it could. Got to about 7 o'clock in the evening. Obviously nothing was really going on. Mike decided that it was probably best that he went home. There weren't any kind of signs that this balloon was going to drop out imminently. So him and my mum, who was also my other birth partner, she went home. I decided to have a shower, get into my pyjamas, you know, get tucked up in bed. I had my wireless headphones, so I just sat and kind of watched a bit of telly on my phone. I've got Netflix on my phone. So I just sat and kind of chilled out and just tried to relax. And I thought, well, I don't really want the balloon to come out now because it's like 9 o'clock at night. I would rather have like a full night's sleep and then, you know, go into labour tomorrow, or, you know, for things to kick off in the morning. That would be so much more sociable. Just thought I'll pop to the loo quickly, and about 10 o'clock my balloon dropped out. So I was going to the loo, and as I said, it kind of just, it felt different, so I just gave it a little tug without too much information, and it had dropped out. And had a chat with the midwife, and she said that central delivery suite was really quiet, so they could take me straight away to break my waters and hopefully try and kickstart labour naturally. Packed all my stuff up on antenatal ward and called Mike and said, could you come as soon as possible just so I don't lose the room and it doesn't get really busy. So him and my mum came, and we went up to delivery suite. I think it was about 11:30, midnight, something like that. So got into the room, had a chat with the midwife, and I said that I really wanted to try and go for a water birth if possible, because so far my labour had been drug free. My blood pressure was still all over the place, so they'd given me loads of different meds to try and bring it down. But I think being nervous about giving birth, the worry of it all had obviously had an impact on my blood pressure as well. So they broke my waters. Thankfully the fluid was clear, so I didn't need any additional monitoring. And the midwife said to me, we'll give you kind of a couple of hours just to see, you know, whether you go into labour by yourself, whether your kind of contractions start picking up. Yeah, they kind of left me to it really. So I was quite happy, just tried to kind of move around the room, bounce on the ball. If you see my birth vlog, you'll have probably seen me sat with my mum. That was just after my waters had been broken. They left me for about an hour and a half and came back in and said, you know, you're having mild, I was having mild tightenings, but nothing really major. They said to me, we're gonna have to start you on the oxytocin drip, which is something I really wanted to avoid, but I think because it was an early eviction, obviously he wasn't ready to come out at that point, but for his safety, obviously he needed to come out. You know, my body was not ready to labour at all. So we moved to a different room, a bigger room, thankfully, because they had the availability with an ensuite and out of the water, the birth pool room. They started me on the drip, I think about 2-3 o'clock, I think it was. And initially the contractions were not painful, but they were uncomfortable, but I was breathing through them. I'd done some kind of hypnobirthing practice beforehand, so I really didn't want to have any unnecessary pain relief. I was quite happy not to have an epidural at that point. I think I was on the drip for maybe an hour and a half, and my midwife went for a break and another midwife came in, and I started to notice that my contractions were getting shorter, the gaps between were longer. So she said, oh, maybe we'll just up, you know, the infusion of the drip. Obviously Bodhi had to be monitored throughout the whole time while I have the drip, because I think obviously they can get quite distressed. I started to feel more uncomfortable. The contractions were getting more and more painful. So I said I'd like to start on the gas and air. Getting up to go to the loo, and it started to get extremely painful. So she said, right, you know, you haven't had an examination for ages. Let's examine you, see what's happening, and then we can kind of go from there. She said also at the same time, because I was mobilising, they were losing his heart rate with me moving around, so they said, would it be okay if they put a clip on his head? And I said, yeah, that's fine. But Theo had the same, so I knew that it wasn't, you know, anything drastic. So she went in and examined me. She said I was 5 centimetres, but the cervix was posterior, which means it's around the back of the baby's head. It wasn't in an optimum position for delivery. And I thought, oh, bugger this. I was like, this is ridiculous. The pain is starting to really get up there, and I'm looking for some more pain relief if I'm not imminently delivering. So I said to her, get me an epidural, while screaming, get out, get out, get out, because she said that she'd given me a good old sweet while she was there and brought the cervix round to the front of Bodhi's head, and that was unbelievably painful. So I was like, no, I'm only 5 centimetres. And she was saying to me, come on Sophie, you know how this works, you've seen this a million times. People that have had multiple babies can go from 5 centimetres to 10 centimetres in 20 minutes. You'll be too late for an epidural, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, I don't care, I want an epidural. So she went out of the room, and I said to Mike, please, please go outside and speak to her, tell her I really do want an epidural. I don't want to be in this much pain with the increase on the drip and stuff. So he went out, she came back in, she said, look, fine, have an epidural, but why don't you have some pethidine between now and the epidural, just to kind of, because you could be waiting a while for the anaesthetist to come. So I was like, okay, I really didn't want pethidine, but at that point I was contracting every couple of minutes, and they were really, really painful. I was having a lot of pubic bone pain. So I was like, yeah, okay, fine. Right before they went out to kind of do the pethidine, I got up, wandered into the loo with Mike, and I started to kind of make some different noises. I looked at Mike and I was like, oh no, and he was like, what's up? And I was like, I'm making the noises. I just knew that it was changing. I knew that my body was progressing. So I got back onto the bed and they gave me the pethidine, and within kind of 20 minutes or so I was gung-ho, ready to push, completely overwhelmed by the feeling of pushing, and I had a normal unassisted delivery at 6:33. For me it was an amazing induction, really painful, but for a short period of time, and obviously yes, intense, but something that I could manage with the pain relief that I had. I did have a 2nd degree tear, but I was expecting that anyway. I'd torn the first time, and you know, I just kind of knew that was gonna, or I had a feeling that was going to happen. I mean, firstly, you know, induction of labour doesn't have to be awful. I suppose this is kind of more of a positive story of how it can go well. Bodhi came out and he was happy and fine, and, you know, had all of his tiny, absolutely tiny, and way smaller than they ever thought he was going to be. He cried straight away. We had skin to skin straight away. I got to do delayed cord clamping. I got to breastfeed him within like 10-15 minutes. So, you know, I had a really good induction of labour, considering. First tip would be for you to find out what inductions your hospital do and read up about them, and just try and think about what kind of, you know, induction you want. Second tip would be to pack a bag filled with entertainment and food and different clothes, stuff to wash with, because you could be there for a long time. Prepare for it to be a long process. Don't assume that everything's gonna kind of happen quickly, because in a lot of cases it doesn't. even for me as a second time mum, obviously I was in for over 24 hours trying to get my body to labour. So I would definitely recommend that you prepare yourself for the long haul. And then you won't be disappointed. I think a lot of the time women are disappointed because they don't go into labour straight away, or, you know, they make decisions in the moment that they weren't prepared to make. You know, don't be too hard on yourself. I would make your decisions about pain relief early on. I would be realistic. They're not natural contractions. They're not, you know, it's not your body doing what it's supposed to do. It's being forced to do it. So I would kind of make your peace with that and just, you know, either decide whether you're going to stick it out or give yourself some leeway and just have the bloody epidural. Because if I'd been in labour for a long time, I would have definitely had an epidural. Obviously I was begging for it right at the end because I knew that I didn't want to be in labour for a long time and in that much pain. And pushing is, you need your energy for pushing. So make your decisions about pain relief while you're there. Yes, yes. Don't be frightened of induction. You know, I think you need lots of happy hormones. So try to watch videos on positive induction stories if you can, rather than letting people tell you their horror stories. The thing is, women do want natural, as pain-free as possible water births most of the time, and do you know what, it doesn't always work out that way. So I just think if you're realistic with yourself, you're not kind of setting yourself up for a fall, if that makes sense. But most of my tips really are just around making sure that you understand what being induced is about, and, you know, make your decisions before you go in, because I think knowledge is power, and without that, you know, you might make a decision that you ultimately regret, or you're forced into a decision that you wouldn't have made had you not been vulnerable and in loads of pain. So there are lots of different reasons why women are induced. For myself, obviously it was a risk factor, so I was quite comfortable with the decision that I'd made to be induced. Your labour is your labour, your birth is your birth. You have every right to let your body do what it needs to do. So you have every right to refuse induction if you don't want to have it. That was my induction story, and hopefully some tips to help you prepare for your induction. Like this video if you liked it, and share it if you want, or if you know somebody that's going in to be induced so that they don't completely freak out. And comment below on your induction stories, and if you have any other questions, please leave them below. Subscribe, I would love you to subscribe. That would be amazeballs. And as I said before, make sure that you check out the Channel Mum forum with all the chat and support groups, because they really are your villager mums. You know, go over there and you'll find somebody that you connect with that can hopefully help you through your parenting journey. Thanks guys for watching, and I will see you all very soon. Bye.